viewpoint. Swami Vivekananda, while envisioning holistic perspective of education, said, and I quote, "We want that education by which character is formed, strength of mind is increased, the intellect is expanded, and by which one can stand on one's feet." Today's word calls for the approach of value-based education, which enables learners to equip themselves with academic achievements, skills. The value-based education does not come alone. It requires the environment of transforming the way we teach. The NEP does not only talk about bringing changes in the way we learn, but also emphasizes on the way we teach. The holistic development aims to develop physical, mental, intellectual, emotional, and moral capacities of a human being in an integrated manner. With these words, I once again welcome our Honorable Minister of State of Education and all our distinguished guests, speakers, and participants from across the country to this webinar. I am confident that the dissemination of the discourse emanating from the webinar today will contribute in realizing the goal of holistic and multidisciplinary education, future generation of the learners. Thank you all and Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for welcoming our guests. Now I request respected Shri Amit Khare ji, Secretary Higher Education, Ministry of Education, to give his opening remarks. Sir.
Honorable Minister Dr. Suhas Sarkar ji, Chairman UGC Professor D.P. Singh ji, my colleague Secretary School Education Anita Karwal ji, Chairman AICT Professor Anil Sahasbuddhe ji, Vice Chancellor IGNOU Professor Nageshwar Rao ji, distinguished members of the UGC and all distinguished academics who are participating in today's webinar. First of all, I would like to welcome all of you on behalf of the ministry. Professor D.P. Singh has already welcomed you, but I feel on behalf of the ministry I must welcome and also thank Professor D.P. Singh, the Chairman UGC, for organizing this webinar, which is a continuation of the program launched by Honorable Prime Minister on 29 July this year to mark the first anniversary of the National Education Policy 2020. As you are all aware, the National Education Policy 2020 was announced after 34 years. The previous policy was announced in the year 1986. There were a few amendments carried out in 1992, but after that there was no review, although the world has changed tremendously in the last 3 decades. Therefore, under the leadership and guidance of the Honorable Prime Minister, a committee led by Honorable Dr. K. Kasturirangan, Padma Vibhushan, and a very distinguished scientist with members drawn from various institutions, including Professor Manjul Bhargav of Princeton, Vice Chancellors of the various Indian universities, distinguished academics from the school education side, skill development. They were formed, and this committee, after due deliberations, drafted the policy, which was under the guidance of the Prime Minister and the Union Cabinet. It was accepted and announced on 29 July last year. One of the fundamental principles of this policy is to have global citizens who are rooted in Indian culture and civilization. Both ends are important. On one side are students, and by students I mean all those, whether they are in school or in skill development or they are in the field of higher education, tertiary education, research, they should have a global outlook, but the roots must lie in India. In this sense, we have had a long tradition, historical tradition of eminent scientists, astronomers, academics, and that has been recounted. Their names have been recounted in the policy. Let me quote one sentence which was mentioned by Honorable Prime Minister during the convocation ceremony of Vishwa Bharati, which was conducted on 19th February 2021. Honorable Prime Minister had said, "This education policy is also an important milestone in building a self-reliant India. The government is also working continuously to create a strong research and innovation ecosystem in the country." And then he also mentioned, the government has decided to give free access to millions of journals in the country and world to the scholars, focusing thereby, although because he was in Vishwa Bharati, he was focusing on higher education, but this has been the running theme throughout the policy, that education must have core values of our culture and civilization, but it must also have a global outlook. And this is why today's session is extremely important. How to have multidisciplinary and holistic education. I must congratulate Professor D.P. Singh for quoting Pandit Madan Mohan Malviya when he established the Kashi Hindu Vishwavidyalaya, and specifically mentioned as to how the Indian values must be a part of the Indian education system. Honorable Prime Minister, while addressing the nation and all of us during the webinar on 29th July, had again mentioned as to how Mahatma Gandhi and the ideals of freedom struggle will be a guiding principle in our national education policy. Coming to the multidisciplinary and holistic education, of course, we have a panel of very, very distinguished academics, and I can see many of our friends joining here from Indian universities, and also, if I'm not mistaken, I can also see from Nalanda University, which is an international university. The Vice Chancellor is here. Today, the new knowledge is created at the intersection or the boundary of the various disciplines. The old boundaries that we had in terms of streams at the school level, science, humanities, commerce, and at the higher education level between technical, professional, and general education, all those are getting blurred. The new knowledge which is created, for example, the biomedical engineering, if a ventilator is to be designed, it does require knowledge of human anatomy. It also requires some knowledge of the medicine and also a strong knowledge of mechanical and electrical engineering. Similarly, if vaccines are to be produced, on one side, we have the biotechnology. On the other side, there is an interface of science, particularly chemistry. If the vaccine is to be used, I just mentioned if the vaccine is to be manufactured, but if it is to be used, there is a third dimension of the social sciences. How to make the vaccines available, how to remove the hesitancy towards vaccine, that is a part of the social science. Therefore, the old models that we had of disciplines and of having very tight silos, that is to go. If we have to enter 21st century and if we have to be a world leader, we must create new knowledge, and that new knowledge will come at the intersection of boundaries of the earlier disciplines. Same is true if we are talking of artificial intelligence, if we are talking of machine learning. They are all at the intersection of various disciplines. At the same time, the knowledge must be holistic. Holistic in the sense, the same knowledge which creates atomic energy also leads to the destruction in form of an atom bomb. The difference is only of the values. Being a student of physics, I can only say that knowledge or physics does not distinguish the movement of the quantum theory, does not distinguish between the usage. The usage comes from the mind of the person who has acquired that knowledge. And this is where the values are very important. That if we have the values of, say, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam, perhaps the use of that knowledge and energy will be in one direction. If we don't have the values, perhaps we will go for commercialization and the knowledge will be misused in many other ways. So the multidisciplinarity and holistic, both words are very important to build a strong India in the 21st century. Let me also add that in this year's budget, Honorable Finance Minister has announced a GLUE grant. This is a very special subject, and therefore I like to devote 2-3 minutes on it. GLUE grant is where we have a number of institutions. Can we bring synergy between them by using a GLUE grant? And the Honorable Finance Minister in her budget speech had given example of Hyderabad, where we have almost 40 different institutions. There is the IIT, there is a laboratory of CSIR, there are laboratories of biotechnology, there is a triple IT, there is a National Law School also. Can we build them together? Or take a second example. In Tirupati, we have an Indian Institute of Science Education and Research. We have an IIT Tirupati. We have a Sanskrit University also of Government of India. And there is a state university. Can we all work together through a GLUE grant? So multidisciplinarity does not mean that we have to open new faculties all over the place. It could also be by way of collaboration between the existing institutions. Of course, some institutions like IIT Kharagpur has gone ahead. IIT Kharagpur already has other than engineering, they are the first and perhaps the only one to have a section on agriculture engineering. They also have education of management, education, a school of law, and now they are coming up with a school of medicine. So this is, of course, a major development for IIT Kharagpur. IIT Kanpur and Indian Institute of Science Bangalore are also working in the similar direction to have a school or an institute within their own campus which will be working on the medical research. But in general, can we also use Sanskrit? There is a lot of research where science can help development of Sanskrit language, and Sanskrit language through its scientific interpretation can also help in developing new areas of research. And this is possible because we have these 4 institutions at Tirupati. So this GLUE grant, which has been announced by the Honorable Finance Minister, will be a further step towards introducing multidisciplinarity. I'm sure today's webinar with the distinguished panel that we are seeing today will lead to many more ideas. I'm really happy that Secretary School Education, Anita Karwalji, has also joined us, because these ideas have to develop right from the school age. In fact, I had met Dr. Kasturi Rangan many times when the education policy was being framed, and he emphasized that the basic ideas or the development of the brain takes place by the age a child is about 6 to 8 years old. And that is the stage where we need to intervene A final word before I close my address is for the parents. The parents have to play a very important role. Unfortunately, most of us, as a parent, we start pressurizing our ward or our child to go for a specific stream, that you must join coaching and become an engineer, join IIT, join All India Institute of Medical Sciences. That pressure which the parents are putting on the student must also go. And we need to convince the parents that the future is multidisciplinarity education. And that is what will help their children to achieve their talent in the 21st century. With these words, I once again thank Professor D.P. Singh and the entire team of UGC for organizing this webinar. I'm sure today's discussion will help us in further strengthening the ideas and the guidance which have been given by the Honorable Prime Minister and the Honorable Minister Shri Dharmendra Pradhan ji, Shri Dr. Suhas Sarkar ji. I thank you once again. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much for enlightening us on the background of national education policy. And you have beautifully illustrated how holistic and multidisciplinary education is being implemented in the country. Thank you very much, sir. It is a matter of great honor that Honorable Minister of State for Education, Dr. Subhash Sarkar ji, is with us today to share his vision on education and bless us. Dr. Subhash Sarkar is a renowned leader and Indian politician. He was elected to the Lok Sabha from Bakura, West Bengal in 2019. He is a gynecologist by profession with MBBS from Calcutta University. But other than that, he had been very actively associated with different programs of philanthropic and social organization such as Ramakrishna Mission, Bharat Sevashram Sangh, Vidya Bharati, Voluntary Blood Donors Association, and Bharat Vikas Parishad, and many more. It is a matter of great pleasure and pride that today he has very kindly consented to chair the session, and in spite of all his busy schedule, he is here with us. Now, I most humbly request Honorable Minister of State for Education, Dr. Subhash Sarkar ji, for his inaugural address. Sir.
Honorable UGC Chairman, Professor D.P. Singh, Honorable UGC Secretary, Professor Rajneesh Jain, AICTE Chairman Anil Shastrabuddhe, Higher Secondary Education Secretary Mr. Amit Khareji, School Education Secretary Anita Karwal, Vice Chancellor IGNOU Nageshwar Rao, and I should also remember my Cabinet Minister's name, Sri Dharmendra Pradhan ji, and all other Vice Chancellor, eminent academician, distinguished guests, students and friends. Namaste ji, Shat Sri Akal, Khamma Khani, Namaskar, Kharum, Jari, Shivai, Namaskar, Johar, Namaskaram, Vanakkam. नई शिक्षा नीति के लागू होने तथा इसके परिवर्तनकारी बदलाव के साल पूरा होने के उपलक्ष्य में आयोजित इस राष्ट्र स्तरीय आयोजन के लिए मैं विश्वविद्यालय अनुदान आयोग यूजीसी को अप्रिशिएट करता हूं और आप सभी प्रख्यात शिक्षाविदों के साथ अपने विचार साझा करते हुए मुझे प्रसन्नता हो रही है. On the completion of 1 year of NEP on 29th July 2021, our visionary Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji addressed policy makers in the domain of education, students and teachers from across the country. He emphasized on vibrant knowledge society and global knowledge with holistic, flexible, multidisciplinary and suited for 21st century needs. This was followed by series of webinars based on themes related to National Education Policy 2020. Today's webinar on holistic and multidisciplinary education is second in this series. The NEP is guided by rich heritage of our ancient and eternal Indian knowledge and balances between fundamentals of Bharatiya ethos and global trends of adopting technological tools in education. The implementation of NEP 2020 is a mission, vision, plans, strategies, programs, projects, activities and feedback. India had a long tradition of holistic and multidisciplinary learning from universities such as Takshashila and Nalanda to the extensive literatures of India combining subject across fields. Ancient Indian literary works such as Banabhatta's Kadambari describes a good education as knowledge of the 64 colors. And among the 64 colors were not only subjects but also scientific fields such as medicine and engineering. The very idea that all branches of creative human endeavor should be considered colors has distinctly Indian origin. This notion of knowledge of many colors or arts, or what modern times is often called the liberal arts, must be brought into the mainstream of Indian education, as it is exactly the kind of education that will be required for the 21st century. Dear friends, holistic development is not new to India. Even after Takshashila and Nalanda, the importance of development of personality in every sphere of life can also be seen in the ancient India. Rajarshi Krishnadev Rai, greatest ever king of Vijayanagar, was popularly known as Abhinava Bhoja and Bhoja in all arts. The belief in ancient India was a king must be a mighty warrior, but must also be a man of culture and scholarly wisdom. Rajarshi Krishnadev Rai had mastery of
ಆಲ್ ತಮಿಳ್ ಚಾನೆಲ್
Shastra,
ಅದೊಂದು
Shastra and Shastra. Along with this, he was also a very generous, kind-hearted human being and scholar of par excellence. His court had great intellectuals, scholars and also 8 of the best poets of South India. The life and wisdom of Rajarshi Krishnadev Rai are timely reminder of what holistic development is all about. In ancient India, everyone paid attention to overall personality development. Learners were not only asked to study Vedic knowledge, but were also taught warfare techniques and necessary life skills required in that era. I feel we need to rebuild this model of education where one is empowered in every aspect of life. And with immense pride, we all can say that the new policy is going to bring it back. In modern times, our president, former president, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, believed the purpose of education is to make good human beings with skill and expertise. Enlightened human beings can be created by teachers. He went on to suggest educationists should build the capacities of the spirit of inquiry, creativity, entrepreneurial and moral leadership among students and become their role model. In the world of globalization, we need our education system based on holistic approach, which will enable us to address the emotional, social values, ethical and academic needs. Every child is unique. We all who are present here have unique personality traits, interests, preferences, values, attitudes, strength and weakness. Holistic education must help the child to develop and nurture 21st century skills like active learning, out-of-box thinking, critical thinking, effective communication, collaboration, technological skills, knowledge on life skills and career, personality, etc. The NEP is designed to help every child to find his or her unique place in the world of alignment with the uniqueness that he or she has. All-round development can be achieved through holistic instruction, which is very fundamental in the present global era. Now students will not have to be limited to the boundaries of commerce, science and humanities. They'll be able to choose any subject they want. As an innovation, it tries to rectify the divisive effects that the old traditional concept of learning as a discipline pursued in the study of subjects has upon the child's concept of knowledge. Ladies and gentlemen, let me quote Rabindranath Tagore, which shows us his far-sighted idea on education. The highest education is that which does not merely give us information but make our life in harmony with all existences. We all are aware that Rabindranath Tagore was not only a poet and writer, but he was a brilliant painter. While the nation was fighting against colonization, he envisioned a holistic educational paradigm widely known as Shantiniketan. It promoted the principles of humanism, science, internationalism, and sustainable environment through free interchange of human values and culture. Thus, even after many decades, Rabindranath Tagore is remembered for a unique blend of art and science with cultural and social exchange, which is beyond ideological boundaries. He did not limit his knowledge only to one specific field. It is our responsibility not to limit the aspirations of this new generation and also aware them about the unknown and unseen forms of injustice. The question arises, why do we need holistic and multidisciplinary approach? Today, the progressive mission of NEP is the need of our country and world. In 21st century, modern world faces many problems and challenges for the mankind that cannot be solved without having multidisciplinary approach. Today, COVID-19 has made us think that we need to act collectively to find the solution. Education will help develop well-rounded individuals that possess critical 21st century capacities in fields across the arts, humanities, languages, sciences, social sciences, professional, technical and vocational field. It will develop the ethic or social engagement. Yes, soft skills such as communication, discussion and debate and keen specialization in chosen field. Such a holistic education shall be in the long term the approach of all universities and educational institutions. New education policy, that is the national education policy, will provide an area of knowledge that is open to more research to determine the extent of its use in actual instruction practices. Multidisciplinary approaches enable learners to ask questions which cut across artificial subject divisions and see the whole exercise from an holistic angle. Friends, we all have watched a popular movie based on the life of Sri Sonam Wangchuk for the revolutionary impact in the Himalayan region of Ladakh. He experimented with a new system of education, first in a small number of schools and later expanded it to the whole district under the name Operation New Hope. It tries to give an environment to the students where they could grow, not just in mind, but also in their hearts and by their hands. This model is called Bright Head, Skilled Hand and Kind Heart. The students learn on the go while the efforts of individual like Sonam Wangchuk aims to break the rigid boxes of conventional thinking, be relevant to people's thinking and lives on encourage learning through the medium of practical application of knowledge. It is time for India to move from quantity to quality education. India has been implementing programs like Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan and under Right to Education. We are constantly trying to increase the student enrollment ratio in our education system. Though it has delivered results, some challenges are still need to be addressed. As per the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals number 4, by the end of 2030, countries should be able to provide free, equitable and primary education to all girls and boys. I am sure India will achieve this goal long before the end of the year 2030. When we are talking about Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji's initiative, Make in India or Atmanirbhar Bharat, we need our youth to take a lead in the development of our country, and it is only possible through skill-based learning along with trained minds. The National Education Policy is a revolution in education system where vocational learning is given importance and preference in building our nation's manpower. Finally, the great scientist Albert Einstein said, I should mention, education is what remains after one has forgotten what one has learned in school. And how do we get the knowledge? If we remember one slok, that is Acharyat Padam Acharyat Padama Datte Padam Shishya Shamedhaya Shabrahmacharibhva Padam Padam Kala Krame Necha. That means we learn 1/4 from the teacher and 1/4 from our own intelligence, 1/4 from our classmates, and 1/4 only with the time. I'm confident that our combined efforts with the help of vision enshrined in NEP will move towards holistic education as the cornerstone of national progress and development. Yes, friends, take home message from today's webinar. No compartment, no boundary. Aspirate all virtues of ancient India's education and make it blend with modern science, technology and researches for the preservation of human society and the universe, which will provide bright head, skilled hands and kind heart in New India or Naya Bharat. I will conclude by giving a quote from Kavi Guru Rabindranath Tagore. মনুষ্যত্বের শিক্ষাটাই চরম শিক্ষা আর সমস্তই তার অধীন. That means teaching values of being human is the ultimate education and it encompasses all learning. I extend my best wishes to everyone taking part in this national webinar and wish it a grand success. Many, many thanks. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
बहुत धन्यवाद sir. Thank you very much for sharing your vision of holistic and multidisciplinary education with us by citing various examples from ancient India and modern India and contemporary practices. You have in an excellent manner blended how skill, values, knowledge, scientific knowledge as well as knowledge from arts and humanities can be blended together and how multidisciplinarity can be really practiced. Thank you very much, sir, for blessing us with your kind words. Now this is the time to conclude our inaugural session. So with your permission, sir, I would like to propose formal vote of thanks for the inaugural session, sir. It is indeed my honor to propose formal vote of thanks for this session on national webinar on holistic and multidisciplinary education. At the outset, I express my sincere thanks to Honorable Minister of State for Education, Shri Subhash Sarkar ji, for inaugurating this significant event and blessing us with his inspiring words. Sir, I am sure that under your far-sighted leadership, we'll be able to implement the national education policy to promote holistic development of the academia. I once again thank you very much, sir. Thank you, sir. My heartfelt thanks to respected Shri Amit Khare ji, Secretary Higher Education, Ministry of Education, for his elaborative opening remarks. He is a constant source of innovation, motivation, and support to all of us. Thank you very much, sir, for gracing the occasion. My thanks to Professor D.P. Singh ji, Chairman of UGC, for his welcome address. In University Grants Commission, he is always a constant source of inspiration and guidance and helping us in taking national education policy forward with new initiatives. Thank you very much, sir. I would also like to extend my gratitude to all our distinguished speakers and experts, Professor M.K. Sridhar, Professor Rama Shankar Dubey, Professor V.K. Jain, Professor Sunaina Singh, Professor Bhimrai Maitri, Professor Anup Kumar Singh, Professor Nageshwar Rao, Professor Avinash Pandey, and Professor Badrinarayan Pandey for accepting our invitation to speak on the technical sessions covering key features of national education policy. Ladies and gentlemen, I am grateful to the Ministry of Education for leading this initiative. I am also thankful to all the partnering ministries and institutions for joining us today. I am thankful to all the participants, including UGC Commission members, Vice Chancellors, and all the dignitaries who have joined this webinar and participating in various sessions. I thank my fellow colleagues from the University Grants Commission for their efforts to conduct this webinar. This would not have been possible without their support. I look forward to continued participation throughout the event. Now, as we move on in the technical sessions, we have 3 sessions, and as Honorable Chief Guest leads this inaugural session, we'll start with our first technical session on holistic education. And this session will be chaired by Professor Rama Shankar Dubey, and other panel experts would be Professor Sunaina Singh and Professor Badrinarayan. So we conclude our inaugural session here at this moment. Thank you everyone.